Lovely to chat to you. I'm not sure it's just education. I think everything we've known has been turned upside down in the past couple of months. So coming out of kind of the acute or shock phase, we're now entering what I think is the new normal, and including this remote or virtual working or working from home, which for years now has been on the cards and has been an accessible way of working for many, but really a second best choice. A second best choice for the reason that the office has nevertheless remained central, teams have remained central, and kind of control for the managers and leadership has been primary focus. So some people have worked once a week from home or twice a week, depending on the kind of work they've done. Now, the future hasn't come so gently, and we've been catapulted into this reality where all of us, aside from some key workers, have now had to adapt and work from home. And some businesses, some industries have been ready and have been kind of waiting for this, both in terms of technology and systems and operations. But some businesses, as well as societies and governments, are not ready for this at all. So while remote and flexible working affords this kind of desired flexibility, we don't commute, we have time to think, we have time to do other things, we can work in our pajamas, we can balance breakfast and lunch while we work. That's fantastic. But query how productive we are, query what happens to teamwork, query what happens to the control for the staff who work with us, and query for traditional households where you have children who are cared by one primary parent, whether it's a female or male. The gender lines have now had to be redrawn and reconsidered when suddenly we're facing with the reality that work and home life is now merged, and we now have to think about our domestic duties and domestic deadlines, children or parents or others that we care for, with deadlines and responsibility in terms of our work. So all of us who are remotely working have considered this new normal and have tried our best to ensure that we now have a home office, that we have technology that works, we have deadlines that we meet, we have Zoom and WhatsApp and Google Hangouts that have become the new normal. We have coffees in the morning virtually, we have wine in the afternoon and evening virtually, and actually we're getting on with it. Fantastic. But let's see where this takes us.
Well, I mean, a question I wanted to pose to you now is, if you are now working remotely and you are working in a regulated industry like the financial services, and you've got to comply with certain regulations and you've got to do things in a certain way and you've got to execute orders by as time sensitive because it's stock market, how does that all fit into all this? How do you keep compliance and all the regulations all working as before if you're running on a home broadband? What's the kind of the security implications? How do managers check that things are being done properly? So I mean, that's the kind of question I wanted you to kind of tell me about, because I am curious as to particularly financial services, how they're dealing with all this kind of chopping and changing, or have they already adapted? I don't know.
So, good question, John. Financial services have probably been ahead of the curve because they've had to adopt to reg tech and fintech and technology that have made reporting, transacting, interacting much faster, much easier due to the disruptive or hopeful technology, how you want to put it. So the key, not only for financial services, but all the banking and wider aids around financial services, so the legal sector and accountancy sector, is around information. When information changes so rapidly, when there's a conflicting sea of information out there with directives, regulation, interpretation changing, usually you could come into the office or get a bulletin and find out, well, this is what it means. This is the interpretation by the regulator, by the courts, by our industry. Discuss it perhaps with your manager, with somebody more learned than you are, and try to implement for yourself as an employee, as a manager, and for your clients if you're providing advice for your clients. What becomes slightly more tricky in our isolation and our kind of remote working is the flow of this information. You might get a bulletin, you might get an update, you might get a training course that's new or information that's available. But the necessity to discuss it, interpret it, and understand the market reaction and your, let's say, consultancy or your business's reaction is key. So that kind of interaction, both in terms of a platform from your colleagues, in terms of your team work in your industry and in your work, is essential to be able to distill that information and understand what your regulatory obligations are in light of the updates, in light of the conflict, whatever it is, and what the responsibilities are for your company. So not just you as an individual or a manager, but also for your company.
But I'm old school, and I do like to see and hear and meet people in person. I'm not of the kind of school of thinking of everything can be done remotely, everything can be done virtually, and especially when you're dealing with relationships and doing things in a human way. However remote you are, it doesn't compensate for that kind of interaction. And key communication is also verbal. It's not an email. It's not, it's a verbal thing. So how do you override that? How do you overcome that?
So I think even John, I think even those the younger generation, so not me, but really younger generation, are also old school. And even if they think they don't need the same verbal or visual communication, they actually do. So in order to override that is often businesses and business continuity establish a visual team meeting. That's not done once a fortnight or once in a while. That's done 2-3 times a week. That's both a formal meeting and informal meeting where you can just chat, hang out the way you would in an office when you're getting a coffee, the way you would with colleagues when you're just banter and just trying things out. And that connection, in terms of emotional connection and communication, is key in terms of work. There's also thinking around, John, in your question, thinking around the future skills that we, in terms of old school and new school need in order to ensure that we adapt to whatever new reality we have now going forward.
Right. And now, I mean, the question I wanted to ask you, as a key person at the LGCA, which is the London Governance and Compliance Academy, what are you guys doing now to gear up to this new norm, this new dawn of communications, distance learning, remote working, flexible working? What is LGCA doing to and just tell us what LGCA does first, so everyone who doesn't know what LGCA is, and I'll put a link to LGCA at the bottom of the clip today. Just explain to us quickly what LGCA does.
So London Governance and Compliance Academy is a premier training academy that specializes mostly around governance, risk, compliance, and innovation, or problem-solving courses, both face-to-face as well as a lot of drive and a lot of work around online courses. Now, we have been a step ahead because although we have had numerous face-to-face courses by subject experts, both public courses and in-house courses, we have devoted a lot of time and a lot of resources to ensure that we have a platform in our virtual and online courses that is not only interactive with gamification and artificial intelligence software, but also practical, a toolkit that our clients and our colleagues need. So we don't have a situation where we have an academy for the sake of academy, a tick box training courses
Right.
that are out there for managers, compliance officers, leaders to roll out in terms of affordability, accessibility. But actually, we have courses using neuroscience, using the interactive tools, using that kind of toolkit approach that you and I, our colleagues, and our clients do really need to know. So aside from the courses around regulation, risk, governance, compliance, technology, law, we focus a lot on kind of sustainable learning.
Right.
And in that, what I mean is learning that meets the needs for the future. So thinking around the kind of skills, knowledge, behaviors we're going to need as an industry, as humans, 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, years down the line. So it's not only the updates in regulation and updates around information and new processes and new design thinking and new legislation that's come out. That's essential.
Yeah.
But also around things like tech management and disruptive technologies, what they mean, what they are, how they're going to be used by our clients and by ourselves. Things around skills that perhaps are less predictable or less run by machines, less data driven. So what I mean, skills around communication, skills around people management, skills around logical reasoning, creativity, problem solving, all those skills that perhaps artificial intelligence at this stage cannot encompass, teach, or perfect. So what we're looking at is to empower and train the new talent to be able to enter the workforce and progress within the workforce with the tools in order to succeed. So they need the knowledge. Of course they do. They need the knowledge around what risk management structures are, what compliance means, what they need to do. They need information about their legal ramifications and their legal obligations. But they also need those skills, what the industry calls innovation, which means very little, but it just denotes the new way of thinking or the new way of acting in a world that may not look very similar to the world that you and I grew up in or you and I trained in.
Exactly. Alla, Konikov, Mashensky from the LGCA, thank you very much for that contribution today. I'm sure we're going to see you on a regular basis, and we'll continue this conversation, which is the name of my channel in Greek, the Gouventa, which is conversation. We're going to be interacting with each other on a regular basis on the developments with this COVID-19. Have a good day and happy Passover to you.
Thanks, John.
Yes.
Thank you very much.